All right, good evening, everybody. We're calling to order the Tuesday, September 21st meeting of the Corte Madera Town Council. The first item on tonight's agenda is a closed session regarding a public employee performance evaluation for the town manager, and we're going to start by taking public comment on that item. I do not see any members of the public present at this time, so seeing no public comment, we're going to close public comment, and the town council is going to adjourn to closed session, and we are going to return to this open session Zoom at 6:30 or as soon as our closed session ends. Okay, great. Well, we are all here, so we're going to call to order the open portion of the Tuesday, September 21st meeting of the Corte Madera Town Council. Rebecca, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Mongan?
Here.
Councilmember Ravazio?
Here.
Vice Mayor Batista?
Here.
Mayor Beckman?
Here, thank you. Please join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
That doesn't have a speaker.
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We're going to report out of our closed session. The item that we were discussing was the public employee performance evaluation for the town manager. The reportable action is the town council gave a performance evaluation and has asked the town attorney to make amendments to the manager's contract, which will be brought back before the council in open session at our next meeting. And that brings us to open time for public comment. This is an opportunity for any members of the public to comment on any items that are not on tonight's agenda. Members of the public will be given 3 minutes apiece. And if any members of the public would like to go ahead and comment on an item that is not on tonight's agenda, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. And I'll ask Rebecca to check.
Can I join by phone, Adam?
Martha, could you mute yourself, please? Thank you. Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments?
I'm just checking again.
Great.
And I'm checking both emails just because I don't want to miss anything. We did not receive any emailed public comments.
Great, thank you. And we've got a hand up from a member of the public whose handle here ends in DeLuca, so I will bring them on now. Oh, Rebecca, would you make me a host, please? So I can bring this person on. Thank you. All right, I'm going to bring on this public commenter now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I've never done this before, and I had trouble getting into the meeting, so I don't really know at what point I'm at the meeting.
This is open time, so this is for members of the public to only comment on items that are not on the agenda. If you
yeah,
want
and I couldn't see what the agenda was, so I wanted to comment on the dog leash laws. So should I
Okay,
wait
go
till
ahead.
later?
Nope.
Oh.
Now's a good time. You've got 3 minutes.
I got 3 minutes. Okay. So we in Corte Madera are having some very serious issues with people who are code enforcers coming and sort of harassing neighbors about their dogs being on leash. They're videotaping them and swearing at them, and it's becoming a real community issue. This has never happened before. We have neighbors that have lived here for 20 years and 50 years, and they're very upset at this. And I don't know if anyone else has had trouble getting into the meeting, but I just got in, and so I wasn't really prepared to say much other than it's very disturbing for us to have, there's especially one person, I guess, that calls, and mainly he is harassing people walking by and swearing at them. These older women, they're afraid of him, and it's very scary. So I don't know what else to say other than my public comment for some of the people who are, I think they're elderly and don't really, can't really get on this site to be able to express the frustration with these people that are, I think they're town code enforcers or something. He's calling them, and they're approaching people, but mainly it's this fellow who he just swears at people and yells at them about the dogs being on or off leash. And I do realize there's a leash law, but it's gotten very heated in our neighborhood in Corte Madera, up at the what would you call that? The pathway on Montecito Road. It's becoming a daily event where there's really confrontations with people videotaping each other and yelling at each other, and it's getting pretty heated and not very neighborly. So I guess that's all I have to say, and I don't know if anyone else is having trouble getting onto the site to be able to comment, but I thought I'd put my 2 cents in because I finally got in.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Todd, go ahead.
may I just I just want to clarify, because it's important for clarification. Brenda, are you, there are issues with residents out there in causing problems and videotaping. I just want to be clear, are you sure that is a code enforcement officer, a
No,
town employee, or it's a resident? I think you're talking about a resident.
Actually, it's a resident, and we know his name. His name is Chris. He walks a German Shepherd, and he's just very confrontational. And then shortly after these confrontations with people, somebody comes out saying that they're enforcing the codes.
I understand. So Brenda, I just want to be clear on your statement that we're talking about a resident using profanities and being aggressive with other residents.
It is a resident doing that, and he's calling these people that are trying to. Then he calls code enforcement, who comes out, and I don't think they address us, but they're not as.
Okay.
Anyway.
I understand.
Yeah.
I just wanted clarification to be
Sure.
on the record, what we're talking about here.
Okay,
Just, thank you.
Okay.
thank
great.
you.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Appreciate you letting us know.
All right, I'm glad I finally got in. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any other hands up for public comment at this time, so we're going to go ahead and close public comment, close open time for public comment. We have no presentations tonight, which brings us to our consent calendar. These are items that are routine or have been previously discussed and do not require any further discussion. And any member of the public is welcome to pull an item from our consent calendar for further discussion if they wish to, or make a comment on an item. We're going to start by asking if any council members would like to pull any items from our consent calendar. And seeing none, we're going to open this up to the public. So if any members of the public would like to pull an item from our consent calendar for discussion, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org. And Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments on consent calendar items?
Oh, really, let me just check one more time. Everything is slow today. We did not receive any emailed public comments.
Great, thank you. And we have no hands up, so we'll close public comment and bring the consent calendar back to council for a possible motion. Would anybody like to move? Bob?
Move items 4A through 4D.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second? Fred seconds. Thank you, sir. Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you very much. That brings us to tonight's public hearings. Our first public hearing, 5A, is a public hearing to consider appeal application PL 21-006, requesting the reversal of a planning commission decision approving a second-story addition at 33 Sonora Way. And we have a special procedure that we follow for these appeal hearings. So we're going to start by statements disclosing any ex parte communications between council members and either the applicant or the appellant. So if any council members have discussed this matter in any substance with either the applicant or the appellant, please let us know now. And it looks like no council members have any ex parte communications to disclose, nor do I. So we're going to move on to staff report, followed by council questions for staff.
Hi, Councilmember Beckman and council members. We're having a little bit of difficulty here with our audio and being able to speak in the headsets. So we're trying to actually figure out a solution here. So if you don't mind, we might need to take a little bit of time to sort this out. Unfortunately, the headset was just not operable. And so we're trying to get one that works. I think we're pretty close, but we're going to have Martha use my office, and I just need a little bit more time to set this up.
So what I might like to do then is rearrange slightly the items on tonight's agenda. And Amy, I'll need your help guiding me on how best to do this. But I think maybe if we could start our public hearings tonight with item 5B, that would be the best use of our time.
Yes, council can just pass this item to return to it later and move on to the next item so that we can work out the technical difficulties.
Great. Do we need a vote on that?
No, I don't think so. You can just call the next item.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we're going to put 5A on hold for now while technical difficulties are resolved and move on to item 5B, which is consideration and possible introduction of ordinance number 1008, amending the Corte Madera Municipal Code to require property owners to obtain a fire inspection report prior to the sale or exchange of residential property. And I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor Beckman and members of the council. I'm here today to introduce an ordinance of the town of Corte Madera, which would be ordinance 1008, requiring homeowners, whoever exchanges hands of real property through a sale, to then require a residential resale inspection from the fire department. The current ordinance that's within the municipal code does require a property file review and report. However, no physical inspections ever done at the property by the fire department or by your building department staff. As we are aware, since 2017, California has endured destructive wildfires that have destroyed several properties and residences throughout the state, which comes out to a price approximately about $15.9 billion since about 2017. And what we're trying to do is what the state legislature has come about is written several different bills that could address some of the home ignition problems, and to see if any homeowners have the new property buyers have either been disclosed that their properties are in a high fire danger area, and whether any improvements have been done on that property. With that, in 2019, Assemblymember Wood presented Assembly Bill 38, which would then require property owners that are within the high fire hazard severity zones or very high fire hazard severity zones to be able to have their real estate agent and the seller disclose to the potential buyer of these different building elements that could then reduce the home ignitability during a wildfire. And then it also gives an opportunity to disclose whether the property that they're purchasing currently meets defensible space standards that have been adopted by the town of Corte Madera, which mirror what the Public Resource Code 4291 for defensible space also mirrors that for the state. Governor Newsom signed this bill in October of 2019, which went into effect of July of 2021, requiring this as law now. So what we're finding in Councilmember Ravazio may be able to comment more on his professional side of it, what they're seeing on the real estate. But what we're starting to see is several homeowners reach out to fire departments trying to get resale inspections. And this allows us to capture some of those properties that aren't captured during our normal defensible space inspection program. Because as you're aware, when the fire department goes out and does an inspection on a property, we basically will come to the front door, knock, and if no one's home, we do not trespass and do a full, complete assessment of the property. We basically would comment on it, anything we could see through curtilage, or basically what's seen from the roadway or from a public right of way. So as many of you are aware, most of our properties usually have a real nice curb appeal from the front end of it. However, once you get around either to the side yards of the property or to the rear side of it, then a whole different story is told on whether they're hazardous or not. And what this ordinance would allow then for us to do is for the potential buyer and the potential seller to then apply to the fire department for an inspection, which will then give us permission to go ahead and do a comprehensive inspection report, which covers both our defensible space standards and identifies any elements within the home, whether they have been hardened or whether the home has either been built after 2010 or remodeled since then. And 2010 is an important date because that's when the building codes changed to then require anyone who lives within a wildland urban interface or any kind of fire hazard severity zone to be able to build their homes and use building materials and methods that then meet fire ignitability. With that, I believe the rest of it is within the report that I have written and presented to you, and I am more than willing to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Ruben. And Bob, did you want to add anything to that just from your professional experience?
I was going to, and it came time for council comments, but so I'll just do it then.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll do questions from the council for staff, and we'll start with Charles.
Yeah, so I had two questions. Ruben, do you believe that this will help with the future insurability of the houses to have an actual kind of on the record town inspection?
I think it helps.
Yeah.
I think right now there's legislation being written by both Assemblyman Mark Levine and Senator McGuire, where they're starting to look at what your local communities are doing to try to reduce that fire risk. Is how resilient are we? And I think part of that is being able to express not only with NWPA and what good work we're doing there, but that we're actually out doing physical inspections of properties and making sure that they are meeting both local standards and state requirements.
Right. So this will be a public benefit, not just oversight. And then the other thing that I caught, but I think it was a little sublime, was it sounds like in the report, if it's before 2010, it is only that it is not, and it's only for informational compliance to newer code, that it's not going to be punitive or mandate kind of a mandatory upgrade of any type for residents that were built before then.
Correct. That's all disclosure, just to let you know whether the previous homeowner has done anything to harden your structure or whether it still maintains to the previous code. It's not meant to then tell the new potential buyer that they need to upgrade. However, it maybe gives them a punch list item of things that they need to do.
Right. Yeah, so it puts it in their hands to be more proactive in their own safety and insurability, right? Is what I'm hearing, which I think is the right thing to do.
That's correct. The only thing that's enforceable on our end, which is required now, is to make sure that the property has adequate defensible space. So it's basically removing anything dead or dying on the property.
Great.
Thank you, Ruben. That's all for me.
Thank you, Charles. Any other questions for staff? Let's go to Fred and then Leela.
Yeah, Ruben, does this apply to all residences in Corte Madera residential lots, or is it just to those that are in, lack of better words, a high fire zone?
Yeah, so this would be within the high fire danger area. So all of our hillside communities, or which are designated by our WUI zones.
Okay, I guess what I was trying to figure out along those lines is the way that the ordinance is worded. It mentions in here that Central Marin Fire Authority and provide to the buyer a report of the residential building showing whether the unit is in a high fire area or not. But you already know it's in a high fire area,
Yes.
right?
So it's kind of redundant in a sense because I was trying to capture everything in the event that, say, the town ever decided to get any bigger. And there's areas like, for example, there's portions of the county that are within a high fire hazard severity zone. However, they're not in a WUI zone because they don't have the density of housing. So the more houses you start throwing into hazard severity zones, then it changes that category from just a hazard severity zone to a WUI zone. Like, for example, out in West Marin is not considered a WUI zone, but yet they're within a very high fire hazard severity zone. So it's just so that clarification for our customers.
Okay, yeah, just maybe a play on words when I saw the word weather, but it's already in one, but I understand what you're saying. The other question is, I think the fee for fire inspection is $190.
That's correct.
Okay, do you know when the last time that fee was looked at?
This fee, we've had it at 190 since about 2017, 2018. And that basically covers the cost of the inspection plus any follow-up re-inspections after that.
Okay, thanks. I saw Scott Schultz's name is still on here. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah, it's this fee schedule was adopted when Chief Schertz was still the fire chief. So we kept it as when he was under his leadership.
Okay, and one other thing, I did catch one typo. On the ordinance 1530.21, if you go about 3 sentences, I think it should be if It looks like there's just, an F is there.
Yes, it's, thank you for catching that. I really appreciate it. It was definitely an oversight on my part on a typo. So what he's referring to is under section 2, the amendment to the municipal code, second paragraph, line 6, under defensible space standards. I'd like to make the correction that it should say if the residential building, as opposed to just F. So I'll make that correction on our end.
Thanks, appreciate it. It sounds better with the F.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks, Chief. Let's go to Leela.
Thanks. Just a couple quick questions about sort of how this would work in practice in terms of staff time. So I assume this would increase the number of inspections that you're doing, and I just don't, does that mean you're gonna need to hire additional people, or is this something that will fit into the additional workload? And related to that, is it something that we anticipate, can be done pretty quickly when somebody's, readying their house to put on the market?
Yeah, so I'll take those first. We'll start with the amount of workload. I believe this was when I checked with Public Works, they roughly do approximately 150 or so inspections a year with these or reports. And what we needed to do based on our own internal needs at the department, we were planning on hiring a fire inspector anyway to cover the duties of the fire marshal, which I'm currently holding both the fire chief and fire marshal duties, is for that person to then take on a lot of the resale inspections that the town of Corte Madera, if this ordinance is passed and approved, which will then mirror, this ordinance also mirrors what we're currently doing within the city of Larkspur. So it then combines both the entire jurisdiction under one same code, under one same set of rules. And then the other question, if you can repeat it again.
Just related to that, if there's adequate staffing so that waiting, residents won't be waiting for inspections.
Yeah, so we typically, once we receive application, it's usually within 7 to 10 days that they'll receive a report. And that's when we've been usually on track about 5 days.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Leela. Fred?
Yeah, just one more. It's more directed towards Todd. When this thing becomes law and it passes, how do you communicate this out? Residents, I know, probably be the usual communications channels. How do you communicate it out to, I want to say, the real estate industry, so now they know Corte Madera has enacted this ordinance?
Hey, Chief, do you want to take that? I mean,
yeah, I'll take that. So currently right now I'm working with the building department staff and Adam Wolf on the process of how, when they get a report, how they would then inform the customer that they need to fill out a fire inspection report. And then what we've done when we enacted it in Larkspur in 2018, I reached out to the Marin Realtors Association and then let them know that this ordinance was coming down and what they should expect.
Thanks.
And then typically we'll also put it in all of our social media sites and everything. So we'll advertise it, we'll put it out on the town newsletter. And that way it gives everyone ample time. And my goal is to go ahead and reach out to the Marin Realtors Association as soon as possible. And I believe also one of the members of the director of MWPA will be giving a presentation to them as well, if he hasn't already done so.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for staff from council members? And if not, we'll go ahead and open. Oh, Charles.
Just one more, I know we have a lot of fixed income homeowners here that ultimately will be trying to sell homes in the future. Is there is the fee, if they can't, is that on the real estate, can it be deferred till the sale of the house if they can't afford to basically call for that inspection? If it becomes mandatory, it's just one more thing while they're trying to, live on a fixed income. I guess it would be, maybe it's not a non-issue, it's just something that came up in my mind.
Yeah, it hasn't been a non-issue because usually when the time a home changes hands, that's when the equity is released. And it's either, sometimes it's paid for by the seller, other times it's paid for by the real estate agent. So far at this point, since 2018 with Larkspur, hasn't been an issue. And then prior to my coming here, when I worked at Ross Valley Fire Department since 2013, has never been an issue.
Great, thank you.
Great. Any other questions from council? And if not, we're going to open this up to public comment. So any member of the public who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand through Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org. And I'll start by asking Rebecca if we got any emailed public comments on this item.
Look like we received, no, we did not receive any emailed public comments on this item.
Great. Thank you. And we have one hand up from a member of the public, so we're going to bring on Phyllis.
I just want to urge you to pass this ordinance. I think safety has to come first, and considering the fires we've seen in the past couple of years, there is no way we should ignore the fact that it could happen here. That's it.
Great, thank you very much. And I'm not seeing any other hands up from members of the public, so we'll close public comment and bring this item back to council for discussion and a possible motion, and we'll start with Bob.
Yeah, I'll just answer some of that other stuff quickly. First off, we should absolutely do this. Other towns are already doing it. Other fire districts are already doing it. And real estate industry is used to complying with it. It's not difficult. In fact, that we are now required to do a disclosure form on all transactions in real estate that list all the items he had about eaves, soffits, roof coverings. That's all on a disclosure form. I've been explaining that to my clients for the past couple of months. So people are already used to dealing with this. It's pretty simple. And from the wildfire JPA perspective, we absolutely need as many people clearing space, doing whatever they can. And this allows us to make them do it and enforce it, which we also need. And final thing, Chief Martin, back when you were the fire marshal only, you inspected our house. And I just want to let you know, we tore out all the bamboo that you asked us to tear out. And I had a guy there today who gave me an estimate on replacing all the vents with 1/8 inch. So we're going to do it because I've been told it's the best money you can spend, 1/8 inch fence. So I will make the motion to pass this.
Great, thank you, Bob. Did we have any other comments from council members? And if not, we'll take a second. Fred, seconds, great, thank you. Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you very much. Let's check in with our planning staff and see if they have resolved their technical difficulties.
Hello.
Hello.
Can everyone see me and hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I don't know about you, but I'm ready for in-person meetings again.
Yes. And Martha, let me just introduce to the public that this is now item 5A, which is this is a public hearing to consider appeal of application PL 21006, which is requesting the reversal of the Planning Commission's decision to approve a second-story addition at 33 Sonora Way.
Yes.
And go ahead.
Martha, I want to make sure I have all of your speakers present. It looks like I got everyone over on panelist. I was wondering if Alice Simon Gabriel was to be moved over as well.
Phil, do you know, is Alice joining the?
She's on as an attendee. Is she a panelist as well?
Yes, she should be a panelist as well.
All right, I will move her and then you're all set.
Okay, can everyone see my screen? Are you seeing the presentation or is it in PowerPoint form?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good evening, town council members. This evening, you'll be considering an appeal application requesting the reversal of the Planning Commission's approval of the design review application for a residential addition at 33 Sonora Way. And the project includes a 622 square foot addition on top of the garage of an existing 2-story home and a 312 square foot lower level deck. The project site is located at 33 Sonora Way, and it is accessed by Sonora Way. Located to the north and to the south are single-family homes. To the north is 29 Sonora Way, which is at a slightly lower elevation, and to the south is 37 Sonora Way, which is at a slightly higher elevation. There are additional single-family homes located east of the project site across Sonora Way, and located west of the project site is an open space area, and the closest neighbor to the west is the Simon Ranch property. The project site is developed within an existing 2-story residence with an attached 2-car garage, and the existing habitable space is approximately 2,000 square feet. In 2017, the town approved a minor design review, which was for an approximately 350 square foot lower level addition, in addition to a covered patio in the backyard. And you can see pictures of the covered patio on this slide. And the addition and the patio have been completed, and the project was finalized by the town. On July 13th, 2021, the Planning Commission held a public hearing. And at that meeting, the commission approved a resolution approving the project with an added condition that the material utilized for the guardrail decking shall either be a non-glare glass, tinted glass, or the cable rail design, which was provided as an alternative in the project plans. On July 23rd, 2021, a timely appeal was filed by Phil Simon of 4 Simon Ranch Road. And the appeal listed 2 appellants, Phil Simon and Alice Simon Gabriel, also of 4 Simon Ranch Road. The proposed location of the addition is highlighted in blue. The addition is located above the existing garage. And the location of the addition places it closest to the neighbor to the south at 37 Sonora Way. The setback to the southern property boundary is 9 feet 6 inches. It is set back 32 feet to the northern property boundary and 70 feet to the rear property boundary. The proposed lower level deck is highlighted in green. This deck is located 6 feet to the southern property boundary and 35 feet to the rear property boundary. There are a series of existing retaining walls on the project site that are not being modified. And there's also landscaping on the project site, and the applicant does not propose to remove any of the existing landscaping. And there is a 60-foot wide open space easement that is located adjacent to the project site. And this easement is owned by the Madera del Presidio Homeowners Association. The front elevation faces Sonora Way. The applicant is proposing a new ridge that runs in an east-west direction. There are also 2 gable roofs that are proposed on the front elevation. And the height of the new ridge would be consistent with the height of the existing structure. The addition includes 3 new windows on the front elevation, all of which are located in the proposed bathroom. The north elevation faces the neighbor to the north. This elevation includes 1 new window on the 2nd story. And you can also see the side profile of the proposed deck. The height of the deck at its highest point is 9 feet 6 inches. And this measurement is taken from the finished grade to the top of the railing. And the height to the top of the decking surface is 6 feet. The size of the deck is 312 square feet. However, only portions that exceed a height of 3 feet are included in the lot coverage for the property. And the size of the deck included in lot coverage is 184 square feet. The west elevation faces the open space and the Simon Ranch property. The addition includes 3 new windows on the 2nd story, 1 larger window in the middle, and then 2 smaller windows on either side. And the windows are centered on the addition. And again, you can see the proposed deck from this elevation. The maximum height, again, is 9 feet 6 inches to the top of the railing and 6 feet to the top of the decking surface. And the applicants are proposing a non-glare glass material around the deck, and a fire pit is also proposed on the deck as well. The south elevation faces the neighbor to the south at 37 Sonora Way. There are 3 new windows proposed in the addition, 1 located in the bathroom and then 2 in the master bedroom. And again, I've included the site plan to orient you and the location of the addition and the deck in relation to the surrounding properties. These next several slides are pictures that were taken by staff. This picture was taken on 33 Sonora Way on the western property boundary, looking east towards the existing residence. This picture was taken from the open space area. Again, this open space is 60 feet wide, and the picture was taken in the approximate center of the open space, looking east towards the existing residence on 33 Sonora. This picture was taken from Simon Ranch. It was taken standing in between residences 1 and 2, looking east towards the proposed addition. And this picture was also taken from Simon Ranch, standing near 4 Simon Ranch, looking in an easterly direction towards the project site. I've included the design review findings. These findings are used to evaluate all projects. And this evening, the council's decision regarding whether to uphold or to deny the appeal must be made based on whether or not the findings related to the design review application can be made. This shows all of the attachments that were included to your staff report. The staff report and the various attachments comprise the full application record, and I'm available to answer any specific questions that you may have about any of these attachments. There are 4 options that are available to the town council this evening. You may, 1, deny the appeal and uphold the planning commission's action by approving the attached resolution. 2, you may modify the planning commission's action by changing the conditions of the approval and associated findings for the design review application. And this option may require staff to return to the town council with a modified resolution. 3, you can approve the appeal, thereby overturning the planning commission's action approving the design review application. Direct staff to prepare a resolution with required findings denying the application, and direct staff to return to the town council for approval of the resolution. And lastly, you may remand the action back to the planning commission with direction for its further review and determination of the appropriate conditions. And I've included the order of proceedings for tonight's appeal, and also included the time limits for the presentations and the rebuttals by the appellant and the applicant. And that concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you very much, Martha. We're going to go now to questions from the council for staff. Do any council members have questions for staff? I'm going to be scrolling through here to see my council members. There's Bob. Let's start with Bob.
Yes. How far is the appellant's house from the house that's the construction's on? Do you know that?
You'll refer to the site plan.
I think I recall reading that there's a 60-foot wide
Yeah,
open space.
so the distance from the addition is 70 feet to the rear of the applicant's boundary, and then there's a 60-foot easement. So that's 130 feet. And then I would estimate that the closest residences, those are 1 and 2 Simon Ranch, that those are probably an additional 5 feet to the property boundary. So yeah, I would estimate around 135 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Any other questions from council at this point for staff? Just scrolling through again, not seeing any hands. So we're now going to open the public portion of this hearing, and we're going to begin by a presentation by the appellant, followed by a presentation by the applicant, and both parties will have 10 minutes each to make their presentations. So we will start with the appellant.
First, you can hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you to those of you who took the time to visit Simon Ranch to try to better appreciate the impact that this project might have on us. We know you went out of your way to come down. Some of you might not have approached the doors of number 1 and number 2, or stood on the porch at number 4, or walked to the western side of our property, where we have 2 buildable sites and where the full array of homes on Sonora Way overlooking our property are visible. If I could take just a minute to share a screenshot with you. Does that work?
Yes, sir.
That's looking east. You see the applicant's home is just above the carport. That's on the right-hand side of the house that's shown as number 1 there. I'll keep this short. assuming you've read our most recent letter describing our concerns. On appeal here, we're asking for two relatively minor changes that in no way would imperil the project, but would bring it in line with the town's own stated goal of maintaining harmony of design in its neighborhoods. The glass deck guardrails and discordant window configuration is out of step with the house itself and nearby homes, including our own dwellings. First, we're asking that the deck guardrail be something other than glass. Originally, we had said we were open to wire railings as an alternative, but the proposed elevated fire pit on the deck concerns us. We don't want to see open flames or their reflection from our property, and doubt that the people on Meadow Ridge Drive to our west do either. We ask that the deck guardrail is configured to shield any flames from our view. Second, we're asking that the arrangement of windows in the proposed master bedroom be modified to be more harmonious with the existing upper story windows of number 33, as well as those that face us, along Sonora Way. So they're more in step with or somehow enhance the ranch style aesthetic of the original architecture. Let us say strongly that we have no animus toward any of our neighbors. My sister and I grew up with the kids from Marin Estates. Our family worked with our neighbors on Sonora Way to preserve our surroundings. And every once in a while, I give tours to children from local schools. We're not trying to quash this project. But unlike others who wrote letters of support for the project, we want it to be better. We will have to look at it for many years to come. So we're not looking to stall this project any further. But we do ask the town council tonight will see the benefit of the simple modifications that we seek and take the appropriate action to implement them based on the town's stated mission to work with residents to improve the beauty and character of our town. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We're going to move now to a presentation by the applicant, and the applicant has 10 minutes to make their presentation.
Hi, everyone. Phil, nice to meet you, see you in person finally, after 8 years here. It's great to put a face with a name. Thank you, everyone, for your time. My name is Renuka Kumar. This is my husband, Craig Block. We've lived here since 2013. We were pregnant with my daughter, who is now hiding in the background. She's 7 years old now. So we've got our 7-year-old daughter, Alana, our 4-year-old son, Dylan, and our first baby, our 12-year-old German short-haired pointer dog. So we've lived here for a while now. And we bought this house back then at the prospect of, starting our family and developing a sense of community here. And I have to say, over the past 8 years, it has completely surpassed our expectations. We love our little niche here in Corte Madera. I think the pandemic and homeschooling and the community rallying together, like even further solidified the fact that we want to call this our home for the long term. We want to raise our family here. We've met so many incredible neighbors and friends that we call family here that we want to be here for the long term. We want to grow our family here. We want to, make this our forever home. So you can tell it's kind of chaotic here. So, with this addition, we're very excited about this addition. It really consists of a master bedroom, like Martha said. We all share a bathroom on the second floor right now, all of us in the pandemic home all together. So, we really, are hoping to just expand our space a little bit more, add that bedroom, bathroom. And then, really the deck portion is, there's the former owner had this fire pit that's pretty dilapidated and kind of falling down the hillside right now. So really the idea for a deck was to level that out to make it safe for our kids to go from, this side of the yard to that side of the yard. So, that's what we're proposing here. We appreciate everybody's time. I know there's been a lot of, time and work and effort involved with all of this. So I just, wanted to at least preface this with, just an introduction and a little bit on what we're doing. So I'll hand it off to Craig, who can say a little bit more about what we're trying to do.
Guys, thank you very much. We really appreciate everyone's time today, particularly like Martha and the city planning who put together, I couldn't believe it, a 400-page presentation for this appeal. So we really appreciate everybody's time, and we wish we could have come to a resolution without the need for this appeal hearing. So what I'd just like to highlight is what Renuka and I have done to try to resolve this in a way that is a neighborly way, a way where we could have tried to avoid this, while also reserving our right to make the stylistic choices on our home that fits best with our family and the harmony of the neighborhood. So what we did at the very beginning was we did a voluntary outreach to our immediate neighbors as a courtesy prior to the city notification. Unfortunately, it was our oversight not to provide the same courtesy to the Simons, or we also did not include any of the other 15 houses on Sonora Way that are within the 300 feet of the city's required outreach. This is nothing personal nor vindictive. We just wanted to reach out to the immediate neighbors as we felt those were the ones that were most affected. We never had any interaction with the Simons other than one particular incident 7 years ago. That all said, we understand the desire to have a heads up prior to the mailed notification. So we promptly apologized during the hearing, during that public hearing in July, and afterward with a handwritten card and flowers, recognizing the family's contribution to the neighborhood, while also expressing our desire to work with them. The architecture of the neighborhood is an opinion, it's an art, and we as community members have an awesome ability to help shape where we live. This includes the harmony of the neighborhood. We have 15 community members and neighborhood members that think our plans are aesthetically appealing to the neighborhood. This includes immediate neighbors, other neighbors in the community through the letters that we've included in the support, me, my wife, our architect, Eric, and all of the city planners who voted in favor for the design review. So we appreciate the opportunity to live in Marin, and we are hopeful that town council approves the plans as the city planners did.
Great, thank you both. We're going to move on now to questions from the council members for the appellant, the applicant, or staff.
Well,
do any council members have questions? Oh,
sorry,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that there was a more to your presentation. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my apologies for the delay. My name is Eric Layton. I'm the architect, and I went ahead and came over to join Craig and Renuka just to make it easier on technology. Again, we've expressed thanks, and we do really appreciate all the effort that staff has put into, and thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor and council members for hearing this and all the due diligence that has gone into it. I do believe that design, the aesthetic of the project does fit the neighborhood, and we did quite a bit of effort on the front end to outreach to the immediate neighbors, and obviously we've spoken to the misstep in fully informing the Simons below. However, in looking at the property downslope and the screening that exists already and potential new screening, and by the way, the previous presentation by the fire department and the efforts there speak to this, and screening can be placed. The property is large enough that it can accommodate distance screening that would comply, I believe, to the vegetation management plans and requirements. And that has been considered and certainly is considered and talked about and on the record. We haven't actually included it in the presentation or the plans, but it's certainly considered. But the three issues that the Simons have brought up recently in their recent letter of request includes the lighting potentially, the glass rail, and the windows above. And the windows above, there is a peaked roof that exists now, and the way the windows are configured accommodates that peaked roof and still maintains a view from the space. And that window is very difficult to see from other locations. Mr. Simon's Photoshop or a shot from the distance of his property does actually see it, but from his current residence and other locations, it doesn't seem to be viewable. But that said, it's not unattractive. It just, the bottom sill has to come up in order to accommodate the peak of the roof and still provide a view out from the interior space. The glass rail was dialogued about quite a bit, and we've landed on that as the best solution because of the desire to use the space in the summer months when it's nice to be outside. Quite often it's quite windy here. The wind comes through the gaps, and the glass really does make that outdoor space usable and fits the needs of the usage. And horizontal tension cables are, in my opinion, a bit of a safety risk. They act as a ladder for their young children, and there is a good size drop. And so we just felt that the glass was the best solution. And the fact that the Simons residence is well below, and the deck itself will protect from that view and just really won't have much of a visual impact from below. So we felt it was a good solution, and it was dialogued in the Planning Commission, and they eventually felt that it was approvable as presented. And then the other thing is there's no light fixtures that are proposed on the back that would affect the Simons in that case. So again, we would appreciate your consideration of all these topics, and would hope that we can move forward with the project as applied for. Thank you.
Yeah, Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could, I want to just ask Adam to clarify, because I appreciate Craig's comments. They mentioned it twice about, they felt bad about violating the 300-foot rule for some of their outreach, and they are not held to a 300-foot rule. They didn't violate anything. I just want Adam to clarify that so there's no misunderstandings.
Sure, thanks. And hoping you can all hear me. Just so everyone's aware, there is sort of two different pieces of notification that sort of the planning process involves. The first one is really this very early preliminary outreach, which is actually really a request by staff at the application submittal phase, or even prior to submitting an application, just to do some preliminary outreach to neighbors, and basically the standard is adjacent neighbors and others who might likely be impacted. There's also an out essentially that says, or tell us why you're not doing outreach, basically, at that early stage. Most people, this is our way of sort of encouraging that early sort of discussion, informal touching base with neighbors and starting that communication before things get too far down the road. But the second part of that is what I think the council is very familiar with, and certainly the planning commissioners. Before a public hearing, all neighbors within 300 feet get notified of a public hearing for a particular design review application hearing in this case. So there's just two, and then certainly within the 300 feet, the Simons were notified through that second notification process, which is prior to the public hearing.
Great. Well, thank you, Todd. Thank you, Adam, for clarifying. Thank you, Phil, for your presentation, and thank you, Renuka, Craig, and Eric for your presentation. Sorry again for cutting you off. We're going to go now to questions from council for either the appellant, the applicant, or staff. Do you have any questions from council members? Yeah, Charles.
So this neighborhood that the applicant is in, does it have any HOA or covenants that dictate what the design aesthetic of the building should be? Because I don't believe the town does, correct?
So, and I don't know if that's for me or
It's for staff.
Oh, got
Yeah,
it, got it.
ultimately it's for staff.
Yeah, no, there isn't any HOA association, which typically, for this neighborhood, as far as we're aware of. No, there isn't a sort of local group that holds any design sway on those sorts of things.
Okay, and then just a few other clarifying questions. As far as lighting pertains, the city oversight and planning is whether they're night sky compliant, and is glare also a consideration, or is it only that they need to be night sky compliant at this point?
There are no standards related to glare. Lighting, there's very specific conditions of approval for lighting, that it needs to be a dark sky compliant and it needs to be of a certain temperature and directed downward. This project does not include any proposed lighting. There was lights that were installed several years ago as part of the outdoor patio area.
Okay, and one more. For fences that are below 4 feet, we don't traditionally ask for a design review, correct? And then also within that, is the materiality of a 4-foot fence under the purview and control of the town to mandate? And then also, is there glare components to any town ordinance that would make it so that it would be in non-compliance?
So for fences, there's different height allowances based on where on the property it is. For a fence that's in your rear yard, it can be up to 6 feet without any planning design review being required. And then if it's just a building permit or not even a building permit, we obviously don't regulate materials of fences. And there's no standards I'm aware of regarding glare issues associated with any fence.
All right, thank you, staff.
Thanks, Charles. Do we have any other questions from council members? Fred?
Yeah, I have one question for the architect. I think you mentioned a vegetation management potentially. Is that something that's on the table where you could do some kind of vegetation on one side of the downward slope that would shield either the glass decking or some of the flame coming from the fire pit?
Yeah, this concept was discussed at the Planning Commission meeting or design review hearing. And there currently, the backyard has some vegetation on the perimeter. 2 large trees were removed from the neighboring parcel. And in fact, I think from this parcel, there was a large pine tree that was removed as well that was non-conforming. I'm hesitant to suggest any plantings on the deck itself. The deck itself should be it should be WUI compliant, which is basically ignition resistant or non-combustible. Planting on it or right next to it wouldn't do much to screen anything, and it would primarily be a hazard. However, in discussion with the clients just this evening, I mean, we've talked about ideas for planting down along the fence and or replacing the fence that's down there. There are some live oaks on the property, and in this area there, that's the native plant that is an evergreen, and it would be a good solution along the fence line at some point, and it would provide good screening. It's not part of this application, but is the intent of the property owner to pursue some better screening. There is some plums there, but they're deciduous, and so they lose their leaves in the winter. So they'd like to see something that's a little better than that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Fred. Any other questions from council members? Leela?
Thanks. Just a quick question about the fire pit. And you touched on this, but I'm wondering if you can give any more detail. Just the fire pit looks like it's actually pretty low to the deck. I just wonder if you can talk about sort of how high the flames would come up, and given the angle from which the Simons would view it, whether to what extent you would expect them to be able to see those flames from their property?
I'll address that. It's placed in the middle of the deck, and if you view from below the deck as it goes out, will probably completely obscure the fire pit itself. I would very likely suggest that it would be. It's probably 14 inches tall, which is very typical for a fire pit. They're usually 4 feet by 6 feet is the proposed, and it's about 16 inches tall. The flames themselves, if you've ever been around a fire pit, they're very modest, and it's a warm color. You know, there's the color rendition it's not unattractive, and the usage is going to be very, very rarely for an hour or two in the evenings, like we all do, and sit around the fire for a little while. But I think I could see 10, 20 nights a year it being used if you think of it realistically for an hour or two in the evening. So I don't see it as a large impact, and it certainly won't be very visible.
And then quickly, just to add to that, so the new fire pit is smaller than the existing fire pit. So that existing fire pit we inherited with the house. The previous owner had built it 40 years ago. When we talked to Phil, we had learned that he didn't even see any of the flames from the existing fire pit, or didn't even know that there was an existing fire pit there. And so we were cognizant to make sure that the new fire pit is going to be smaller than the existing one.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Leila. Any other questions from council members? And if not, we're going to open this up for public comment. So any members of the public who would like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. And folks will be given 3 minutes apiece. And we're going to start with the user whose handle here ends in church.
Hi, I've had some technical difficulties, so let me know if I can't be heard. But I'm the neighbor on 29, and I did write a comment when Craig originally showed me this, because I really appreciated the fact that he did incorporate a lot of the design elements of these tract homes that we have, where we moved in here in 1967. So there have been obviously a lot of changes over the years, and a lot of the remodels in neighboring streets to me have not kept the tone that Craig did incorporate. And I really appreciated that with the pitched roofs and even incorporate.
Ma'am, your audio just cut out.
Oh, can you hear me now?
You're back, yeah. I'm sorry, you're cutting in and out. I think we've gotten the
Okay.
gist that your comment is supportive and relates to your take on the design. And I would ask if you have any further comments, if you could just email them to publiccomment@tcmmail.org, and we'll have our town clerk go ahead and read those into the record. So thank you very much. We're going to move on to Shannon Everly.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Craig and Renuka. My husband, Terry, and I live at 18 Sonora Way, which is directly across the street from the block home. And we did provide a letter of support. And I just wanted to reiterate that we really feel like this addition to their home will provide additional value to the street and really enhance both the beauty and harmony of the street. One thing that Renuka touched on is really the sense of community that our Sonora Way is really developing. And I appreciate that they are continuing to add to that community. Additionally, one aesthetic point that I wanted to point out is their front yard. They've done some phenomenal work when you compare it to the Google Maps view from just a few years ago. So we fully trust that their addition will be both aesthetically pleasing and fit within the street to provide additional value for everyone. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I don't see any other hands up from members of the public at the moment, so I'm going to ask Rebecca if we've received any emailed public comments on this item.
There we go. Sorry, now I couldn't unmute myself. No, we did not receive any emailed public comments on this item.
Great, thank you. And we don't have any other hands up. So I'm going to close public comment. But Rebecca, since the first commenter had audio difficulties, if they do send in an email, will you just let me know, and then we can reopen public comment and you can read up to 2 minutes or how much time they had remaining of their email?
I will, yes, there was just slightly over 2 minutes left.
Great, thank you very much. So we're going to close public comment on this item, and that brings us to rebuttals. And we're going to start with a rebuttal by the applicant, followed by a rebuttal by the appellant, and both parties will have 5 minutes each. So the applicant may begin.
Are you sure you got that right? Is it?
I am seeing applicant before appellant, if that's what you're referring to.
I think we should take.
Yes, appellant goes first under presentation, rebuttal from applicant goes first on rebuttal.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I think that we kind of put our rebuttal and our presentation in with the original presentation. We noticed that Phil in his letter had 3 main points that he wanted to see changed, 2 of which were basically the harmonious in nature, architecture, the aesthetic of the neighborhood. And, this is an art, shaping the neighborhood is an art. And I feel like, Renuka and I, we talked to 15 of our neighborhood members, community members, and we all feel very supportive that what we are doing in this particular remodel does.
My video for Craig just froze. I don't know if anybody else, okay.
Eric had mentioned that there is no lighting fixture, so that was the 3rd point. So I think that we did have addressed everything, and I think that we're okay unless Eric or Renuka has anything to say.
I think it's been said, and we potentially could reserve a moment where we could answer some questions if there were any more. But otherwise, I think we would leave it to Phil to chime in, and we'll leave it up to you to make your decisions.
Thank you, and we'll come back for a second round of questions after Phil's rebuttal. So Phil, you may go ahead.
Thank you. Regarding trees, trees are not an issue here. Screening and that sort of thing is not an issue. We can see around them, we can see through them. There's many deciduous trees. Even some of the oak trees that we're discussing on the open space have been topped with Madera del Presidio's permission, I assume. An owner told me they wanted to be able to see the pasture and the cow. And also they've been recently limbed up for fire protection, so we can see under them to the yards up above. With the windows that we're talking about, they stop the eye as it scans the building. The creative order is in solutions in order here. I don't hear any arguments or comments arguing how these windows are harmonious. Regarding the glass handrails, the issue of wind was brought up, and like solar control, wind control starts well outside the area where the protection is desired. Turbulence can actually increase prevailing wind speed locally. Regarding falls, the National Association of Home Builders contemplated inclusion of language in the building code to address what Eric called the ladder effect. But because studies show that falls from balconies, railings, and banisters among children aged 18 months to 4 years accounted for 0.032% of injuries requiring hospitalization, that's 2.5 per 100,000 in that population. They concluded the low incidence rate did not warrant the creation of code language. Regarding Adam's statement, you saw our letter that regarding outreach. It's not a request. It's required and it's codified. And that's stated in our letter specifically how and why it is. We've reached out to planning, asking them to please help us understand how this is not so. And we've received no response. Craig mentioned that we can't see the existing pit, fire pit. Well, of course we can't see it. It's on grade at a level that's above us. It doesn't protrude above that grade. It's a pit that's relatively low compared to the stone wall that is in between us and it. So of course we can't see it. I don't know if anybody's ever used it, but certainly this deck from the acute angles across our property, we'll see that fire pit. The residents of Madera del Presidio will see the fire pit. The flames can be whatever they want. There's no design approach to help us with this that's been offered. You know, I just hope that, you know, that the neighborhood response, I can see where the neighbors want to support each other. And, you know, the community doesn't want this kind of confrontation. We didn't want it either. What we wanted was to be involved in this project, simply go through it with the owner and make some intelligent decisions, and that would be the end of it. But here we are, and it's about the house. It's about the design. It's not about, you know, getting together with the neighbors and liking them or disliking them. I invited, you know, Craig offered that we come down and Craig offered that that they apologized and brought flowers and that sort of thing. And I invited them down. I said their kids could see the chickens. It would be a good time. We could look at it and discuss it. And they never came down. I invited their architect to come down. He never came down. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. We're going to go now to final questions of the applicant and appellant by council members. Do we have any questions from council members for either the applicant or the appellant? And I am not seeing any hands. We'll go to final questions from council for staff. Do we have any questions from the council for staff on this? Oh, Charles?
Yeah, I think that the legality was brought up once again by the appellant. So I was wondering if Amy could clarify to him directly as requested why that's not an enforceable request, if that's possible.
Yes. Our municipal code sets out sort of two requirements here. Code section 18.36.040 is the notice of application and or public hearing. So that is when someone files an appeal, the town is required to give notice no fewer than 10 days or more than 30 days prior to the date of hearing. And the notice has to be posted and then sent by mail to all persons shown on the last equalized assessment roll of the county as owning real property within 300 feet of the property which is the subject of the hearing. So that's the code section that Adam was referring to once an appeal is filed. Now, prior to that time, when the homeowner is seeking design review, we have code section 18.30.040, application and fee. And this code section says the application for design review or sign approval, same thing applies if you want to sign, shall be filed with the planning department on the prescribed form and shall be accompanied by the required fee and all materials listed on the form. So you are required to fill out the planning department's form. And as I understand it, that form asks as a best practice, you know, what type of neighborhood outreach have you done? Or have you done none and why have you done none? So that is required to be filed. And my understanding is the applicants did in fact file that form. But that code section does not prescribe a specific requirement for notifying neighbors in any particular range. It's a best practice. Now, if moving forward, council felt like there needed to be more specificity about what that notice should entail, council could, could do it one of two ways. It could amend this ordinance to require a more specific notice requirement, or could direct the planning department to give more explicit directions in their form. But to date, yes, there is a requirement that you fill out the form, which I understand the applicants did in this case, but, and again, you are supposed to disclose what efforts you have made or why you haven't made any, but there is no specific requirement as to what that contacting neighbors has to be done, what range, or anything,
Thank you, Amy.
anything specific.
Thank you, Charles. Thanks, Amy, for clearing that up. Any other questions from council members for staff? And if not, we're going to close the public portion of this hearing, and we're going to return to the council for council discussions and deliberation, and then findings and a possible motion. Who'd like to start us off? Bob, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. Thank you. First off, I want to be real clear. I visited the site, the building site, and also the appellant site, looked at everything. And I understand the concerns of the appellant. He just said again that it's about the design. I looked at it very carefully. The design is really nice. It is in keeping with the neighborhood. It looks really nice compared to everything else there, and it's very much in character with that area. I don't really see an issue with that. And I think that we should deny the appellant's request on this because for the reasons I just laid out, this is very much in keeping with character of the neighborhood. I think it's a great design. And also, I think we are setting a really bad precedent. These houses, if we were to grant this appeal, because again, I've sat through more of these, I guess, and been through more of these than most of you, except for maybe Charles, who was on the planning commission for a long time. But when houses are 25 feet apart and there's design issues, it's a really different thing than when houses are further apart like this. So I think we should deny this and move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Who'd like to go next? Charles?
Yeah, I also visited the applicant and the appealant's site. I am a registered architect in California, and I have been on the planning commission for many years. So I have experience with this, and I have seen Phil Simon participate in previous planning commissions, and I really appreciate and want to see him continue to use the process to best feel included in the community discussion about properties. And I liked the word he used, no animus, that ultimately this is just a discussion with the community about his concerns and whether they're valid or not in a group of peers, right? So I think I touched on the safety issues. While he brought up wind, I do find that glass rails do primarily help with wind issues and create a more comfortable zone, and also with the flames will make them more steady. The code dictates on wire what the safety issues are, and it's the 4-inch spacing. It's really about a head entrapment for children, but there is a perceived notion with parents, especially, that the rope systems ultimately are kind of an attractive nuisance. So I just hope that you understand that. I wanted to talk about the massing and window issue. While I understand, and most people do like alignments in geometry, with the modern farmhouse style, and then in a lot of design guidelines in other municipalities that I've seen, you do want to break up the massing and not interrelate them, because if you made those windows basically go across all the way, it would make the entire building speak one language and you would read the entire massing of the building. And usually when you see massing, you want to see things that jut out or break it up so that it's smaller, so it doesn't look so huge and obtrusive. So that was one thing I wanted to add, but that basically your request is a vast majority of people do think that, and it's only through my experience that I've come to understand why there's an alternate discussion for that. So then, also, we talked about the flames. So, usually with those apparatus, they're UL listed, or they have some type of authority that the actual flame projection is controlled and vetted by resources that'll make it safe during building permit consideration also. So while I appreciate your appeals, and in general, what I'd like to share with you, Phil, and what I hope the neighborhood also experiences, is that in future applications, because you're ringed by a lot of properties, that you would just like to be part of the discussion, which I think is a totally fair ask, even if it's not required. And also, I've seen this in other instances where it isn't mandated in the beginning, there is an opportunity within that 300 feet. And if you aren't included, and the reason that it's put in the beginning is to avoid situations like this where you want the first and last word, just to make sure that everybody understood it, because you didn't have that opportunity earlier on. So you've had that. That being said, really it's about, did the Planning Commission make the findings? And within those findings, did we feel that we could also make those findings? And based on my experience and a true deliberation of all your requests and discussions, I also would seek to deny your appeal and proceed with the project. And I hope you understand that. So,
thank you, Charles. Who else would like to speak? Leela?
Thanks. I just wanted to thank both the appellants and the applicant for your presentations tonight. I also visited the property, and it was clear that both of you have a settled life here and you're valued members of our wonderful community. So I have, respect and appreciation for both of you, wanting to use your properties in the way that you see fit. And I appreciate that you have worked together to try to resolve some of these disputes before it went to the Planning Commission or up on appeal here. I think reasonable people can disagree about what is or is not harmonious. But for me, these designs are within the range of what I think can reasonably be considered harmonious. So I don't see a basis for overturning the Planning Commission's very careful decision here.
Thank you, Leela. Fred, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll keep mine short because I think most of the comments have already been said regarding design, the fence and the windows. I appreciate both of you, or all of you, showing up tonight and also giving both sides of the argument. I think that it's a process that we all have to go through at times. I think at the end, it makes sense the way it happens. But I can also see denying the applicant and just having you guys move forward with the project.
Thank you, Fred. And I'll go last year and just say I also visited both the sites, and like my fellow council members, I also certainly can understand the stated appeals, the stated concerns of the appellant. I think at the end of the day, though, what we're tasked with doing here is evaluating whether or not this project meets a very narrow set of findings. And to me, those findings appear self-evident. So I too would deny the appeal and uphold the Planning Commission's decision. But I do want to thank both of the parties for the very civil way in which you both approached this. I know that that's not always how these things go. And I think, as a lifelong Corte Madera resident, that sense of community and getting along with each other and not letting disagreements devolve into nastiness and that sort of thing is, I think, one of the defining characteristics of our community. So I just wanted to give you both a shout out. Thank you both for upholding that spirit. And with that, I would entertain a motion. Fred.
Yeah, one quick thing. I also had the opportunity to visit both sites, so I appreciate the time that I was allowed to do that. And I'll go ahead and make the motion that we deny the appeal.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Charles? Charles seconds. Thank you. Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Lee,
yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yeah.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you very much. And thanks again to both parties for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us on to our business items, as we've already completed our other public hearing. Our first business item is 6A, which is discussion and possible action to approve the housing element work plan and authorize the Director of Planning and Building to enter into 4 professional service agreements to implement the housing element update and to update the town's safety element to comply with state laws. And I'll turn it over to staff.
Hey, thank you, Mayor and council members. I think I'm switch seats here back in my home here. And so hopefully you can hear me okay. And we're done with sort of the challenging technical issues. So I have a presentation. I'm going to share my screen if you don't mind here. Great. So staff is bringing this item before you this evening to request that the town council authorize staff to enter into 4 professional service agreements with planning consultants to help develop and complete and compliant update to the town's housing element. Tonight, I want to provide you with an overview of what is required to complete this project and staff's work plan and strategy for providing our community with opportunities to become better informed and to help shape the development of the plan. And I certainly would welcome any comments or suggestions by the town council on that aspect of this presentation as well. So let's see if I can. So what is a housing element? I'm going to just provide a basic overview here. As most of you are probably aware, the housing element is one element or chapter of the town's general plan. However, it's sort of a special chapter in that while the general plan, which is typically called sort of the constitution, if you will, of the town or the guiding policy document of the town, it gets updated every 20 years or so, or the housing element is required to be updated every 8 years. And the content of the housing element is heavily regulated by state law. Perhaps the most well-known aspect of the housing element is the housing sites inventory section, which is where the town must describe how and where it will accommodate the regional housing needs allocation within town limits. That's also referred to as the RENA, as we've discussed recently in some town council meetings. But there are several other sections that I think are really important to focus on, and that are more focused really around, look, it's every 8 years, we really should have a community dialogue around housing in our community. And the things such as how many basically constraints analysis, what is constraining housing development in the community, what are really needs in order to provide the diversity of housing for different employment sectors, different people in the community to join and participate in community that we have here in Corte Madera. And then setting a variety of policies and programs, which are basically statements of how we will move forward to reach certain objectives and goals related to housing. And certainly a big component of this is really community engagement. And that's really what I was mentioning. This is really from the most positive part of this process, which I know sometimes can be viewed as very painful, but it is really an opportunity every 8 years to engage and have this discussion. And it's obviously an important discussion, as all of you and all of our members of our community certainly view housing through different perspectives. Just for your reference, we did adopt, this was one of the first things I worked on when I Started as the planning and building director here with the town of Corte Madera. It's hard to believe it's almost 8 years ago, but it is. We went through this process back in 2014 and 15. And you could see in this case, there was, this is the housing element in 2015. And you could see at the time, several different chapters, several different topics that get embedded into this document, ultimately a policy document. What makes this time around a little bit more challenging, a little bit more involved. I think we took approximately a year last time to complete it, maybe less. And certainly the length of the document was much more limited than what we'll expect this time around. And certainly the costs involved as well. But what really has changed are some new state laws that have put further emphasis on the housing element and what's actually involved in not only the actual content and analysis required, but also the process by which we actually go about implementing a housing element update. And so this slide just highlights some of the most significant new requirements for housing elements since 2015. And obviously the one that we've talked about the most so far is that our RHNA, our regional housing needs allocation, is almost 10 times greater than it was last time. So from 72 units, we're now looking at 725 units broken into multiple different income categories in terms of affordability levels, which we must plan for. We don't actually we finance these or build housing units, but we plan for them through changes to policy and to changes at the end of the day through to our land use regulations and our zoning ordinance. So higher allocations, that's going to mean we're going to have to actually be more look for sites that we haven't looked for in the past and start having a discussion about where housing is best suited for, well, what sites are best suited for housing development in the community. There's also another requirement, a new requirement this time around to affirmatively further fair housing, meaning that we are actively looking at ways to prevent segregation and poverty concentration, and also importantly for Corte Madera, increasing access to areas of opportunity, and really embedding affirmatively furthering fair housing into our outreach efforts, into the process, and ultimately that is something that we're also required to take meaningful actions from a policy perspective and start to look at certain policies that we should include in our housing element related to this. So I think I note on the slide, the county of Marin, through some grant funding, is going to be working with all Marin County jurisdictions on this particular aspect of the new state law requirements. I think it was AB 686, and the town council. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I think we're going to be scheduling a presentation for the town council in October specifically on this topic. So you'll get more information there. There's more strict limits on the sites that we actually choose for accommodating the RHNA in Corte Madera. And that just means we're going to have to be doing more due diligence, more analysis, and making a stronger case that the locations that we choose for housing development are reasonably likely to be developed within this 8-year planning period. And then there's a requirement as well, not specifically around the housing element, but there were state laws that were passed that said when you go and adopt, if you are adopting, I should say, a housing element after a certain date, in this case, I think it was January 1st, 2022, you also must update your safety and environmental justice elements. We do not need to do environmental justice element in Corte Madera, but certainly safety elements is something that we're going to be needing to update as well pursuant to state law. And that, fortunately for us, really, we've done a lot of this work already with the climate adaptation assessment in terms of identifying the vulnerable areas of our community and identifying some options to address those aspects. Of the, I'm going to go back to see if I can go back. Those aspects of really what the state law now requires us to do is essentially look at climate adaptation and adopt policies to address some of the risks involved. So as I mentioned, we're in good shape there. But certainly there's a lot to do, and there's a lot to do within a relatively short time frame here. So the housing element from a timing perspective is required to be adopted by the town by January 2023. In the staff report, I identified certain ramifications if we do not actually adopt a compliant housing element. Really, this comes down to being challenged, legally challenged by an individual. Now the state is also a party, could be a party to a legal action against the town if we do not actually fulfill our obligations to adopt a housing element, a compliant housing element. Those don't kick in actually until potentially 120 days after January 2023. So as we did, as you saw on the previous slide, last time around, we actually adopted our final housing element in May of 2015. There may be some wiggle room there, but we're not going to plan on it. There's some benefits of actually also being typically when state grants are made available. If you have a compliant housing element, you score much better in a lot of state funding grant applications, including transportation grants and whatnot, or others related to maybe public works. So this slide also just lays out an overall timeline. But in order to do this work, really what the request is tonight is that the town council authorize staff to enter into 4 different professional services contracts in order to complete this work plan and to make sure we do it in the time frame required as well. So I'm happy to be able to present actually this list of consultants who I've essentially handpicked. These are especially the Plan to Place and O'Rourke Associates have long histories working with the town locally. I've worked Plan to Place as a founder is Dave Javid, who we worked with very closely on the Tamil Vista corridor rezoning project and study, and is an urban designer by trade and planner who is now mostly focusing on community outreach and meeting facilitation, and is really an expert there. We have O'Rourke and Associates, who's the founder and principal there is Christine O'Rourke, who worked with the town in developing the last housing element in 2015, and has also helped the town draft its last 2 climate action plans. And LWC, we've been working with through our objective design and development standards work, which you will hear more about this fall as well, but is really experts in housing economics, understanding sort of what it will take to make some of these sites viable as housing development sites. I think also we feel that they bring a great value to the team in terms of their experience having worked in Southern California jurisdictions who have gone through recent housing element updates, and so they have a lot to offer in terms of providing some strategic advice and experience there. And then, of course, we are expecting that we're going to have to look at increasing the density of certain sites in order to make sure that we accommodate RENA on certain sites, which not only that, but for other reasons will require environmental review. And we are looking at doing an environmental impact report and have consulted EMC Incorporated for a proposal. You can see the costs here as well. And I understand these are significant costs. There is some money that is we've already applied for and been awarded in terms of grants to offset the financial costs. And as I mentioned in the staff report, working with Daria and Todd, we did put in the budget for this year $150,000 toward this project, and expect to have a similar request in the next fiscal year budget as well. One of the things that we've certainly focused on is community engagement strategy, and working with Dave and really with Martha and myself, thinking about the best way to really kick this off. And we'll use this meeting as sort of an informal kickoff, and we'll use, as you'll see on this is sort of a mailer that we've already designed that we would like to send out to every residence. Actually, it's every door, I think, in Corte Madera, and business owners or business addresses in Corte Madera as well, to sort of kick off really an engagement strategy to try to really have more significant involvement by our community in this process than we've seen in the past, given, I think, the significant number of units we're really going to have to plan for. And so this is how we envision starting this. Let me see if I can do this real quick. If I can stop share here, I'm going to share also our, let me see if I can do this. Okay, so we've also started working on a housing element update website that's going to be dedicated specifically to this project. And you can see one of the things we're going to ask people to sort of sign up for, put their names in. We're going to create a robust email list to communicate with our community members with. Of course, we have all of our normal ways of communicating with our community, but we're going to take this to another level, I think, with this project. We'll have FAQs on there. We just started to really populate this website. This is sort of an informal launch. We haven't actually opened this up to anybody without a password yet, but you can see some of the information that I've just shown you is going to be on here in terms of the process, what is RENA, and et cetera, and so forth. So wanted to show that to you. And let's see if I can stop sharing there. Well, let's see if I can get back to my presentation. Okay. And so essentially this evening, really, again, we don't have a resolution tonight, but we're looking for your comments and suggestions on the work plan, and authorization to engage the professional services or the professionals that I mentioned through the professional service agreements that are in your staff report. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have or receive comments on what I'm presenting tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Adam. We're going to start with questions from council members. So if any council members have any questions for staff on this housing element work plan, please let us know. I have a few questions. If nobody else does, I'll go ahead. Not seeing any hands. So my first question is, Adam, you mentioned in your report that the safety element of the general plan is closely related to our work on the cap, which is awesome. And I was just wondering, does the requirement to update that safety element present a good opportunity to come back around and address the gap in addressing sea level rise and flooding issues in our cap climate action plan?
You mean the gap in terms of, I'm sorry.
So our climate action plan, right, currently does not have a developed section on protecting,
yes,
particularly bayside properties from sea level rise and flooding. And I'm wondering if that's something that, you know, for the best, I think is going to be forced by updating our safety element here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we have flexibility there. I mean, I would like to be able to start the conversation. I do see it as being, there is some overlap here, but I do see that having, you know, really, as having gone through that process as well, the need to really specifically engage that community around protection measures and other options that may be available and were highlighted through the climate adaptation assessment process. It does present a good opportunity. I'm not sure exactly. I think the conversation will have to evolve, and we're gonna have to see whether that's something we can achieve through this process, given all the other things we're also going to have to accomplish here. So
right,
there's definitely something I've definitely thought about. I think it's a possibility. There is an opportunity here to do that. I just don't want to give the impression that that's sort of top priority at this point in this process.
Understand. Yeah. So it seems like a good synergy if we have the bandwidth for it. So that's my first question. Thank you. Next two questions, and these are, you know, you may not be ready to answer tonight, and that's fine, but it's something that I think we really need to be thinking about. So the first one is, what lessons did we learn from the outreach on our climate adaptation plan? Because I think we saw, you know, the reason that there's that gaping hole in addressing flood risk in our climate action plan is because there was a portion of residents who were immediately impacted by it and were unaware that this process had been unfolding for like 2 years, you know, right underneath them. And so to me, that was kind of like a, you know, that's got to be a big learning experience. And you don't have to answer tonight if you know, I think that may be something that might require some chewing on, but that's one question to think about. Then the other question related is, you laid out a really good program of, you know, 6 or whatever public workshops, and it looks great. My question is, if we get 1 or 2 public workshops in and it becomes clear that attendance from the public is incredibly low, how are we going to react? And again, you may not be ready to answer that tonight, but I think that's something that we really need to take very seriously, because I want to see, you know, a credible pivot. You know, I'm not expecting you guys to be magicians and have the answer, but I think we need to be ready to pivot and try something new if it becomes clear that our first pass at outreach is not working. So that's kind of my second question there. I don't know if you want to speak to any of those now or just like chew on them.
No, I think those are great questions. Those are certainly questions we've been our team, Martha and I, and even talking to Dave Javits. I think one of the great things working with Dave is we've already talked about, look, be ready to pivot, be ready to sort of adapt and adjust to what this process throws at us. And, you know, he's all on board. You know, there's a lot in the scope of work that Dave put in his proposal that talks to not only the 6 workshops, which to me is really one of the responses that I had to the last process, is like, we have the dates on here. This is a card that you're gonna be able to put up on your fridge. It's gonna be ongoing. There's a rhythm to it. It's the second Wednesday of the month, you know, for the next 6 months. You know your time commitment, you know when you're in, you know when you're out, you know. Those things I think can help people really engage in a different way. But we also recognize we need to do other types of in-person meetings. We have scoped sort of pop-up workshops, which we've done at the town center in the past for Dave and I actually worked on the Tamil Vista corridor. We set up a little booth down there and, you know, at town center, and there's no reason why we still can't do that today. And have informal conversations. We have focus groups that we have scoped as well to reach out to people that are going to happen relatively soon. So that's why I think one of the reasons in response to your question is that is I think the highest budget, you know, proposal that you'll see here. I think just that doesn't say everything, there's more into it, but it does show that that is, I think, really the focus of where we want to put a lot of attention in this process and project to try to see if we can't obtain sort of different results.
Thank you, and I'm glad to hear you guys are thinking critically about that. And then my last question is, I was just confused, why the heck can you not reuse sites that you identified in a previous housing element? Because it just seems like that's a recipe for, like, you know, 2 cycles down the road, up, we've already used all the parcels in town. Like,
it's hard, you know, I think ultimately you can reuse it, but things are moving in the state to, if you do reuse it, you have no discretion over the development of that housing on that site. Sort of, it becomes a by right, and the term by right gets thrown a lot around, and more state legislation is looking to take some of the discretionary processes out of the town's hands. And that's sort of a little nugget that was thrown into some state legislation about the housing element that then sort of has repercussions down 8 years from now, making a lot of cities go by right in terms of their zoning, and housing development becomes more easy in that, streamlined in that fashion for at least the development community to come in and build on those sites. So that's ultimately, I think, the purpose behind it. And I think there was some cities and towns that sort of had sites in there that were sort of never really intended to be developed. And so there's a thinking that, well, you know, this will thwart that strategy, so to speak. And you know, in some ways, I could go on, but I'll leave it there.
yeah, okay, that seems like bad policy to me, but what do I know? Anyway, those are all my questions. Thank you. Any other questions from council members? Yeah, Fred.
Yeah, it seems like you got a lot of work to do ahead of you, Adam. The timeline you laid out is, and I know it's a hard date, is January, but the timeline you laid out, it's somewhat is reasonable, because I noticed there's a gap there in, I think, March or so of 2022. There's a huge gap where I think it says like draft housing element. But you think pretty much you can stick to the timelines again with reasonableness and not working 24/7?
Good question. You know, we'll get it done. I can't say there won't be some long days and ahead of us, but you know, that I think that's the point is, there's actually a lot of other communities are in the same place. We're going to be going through a lot of this together. You know, not only our adjacent neighbors, but others throughout the Bay Area also doing this at the same time. So yeah, we all, you know, I think us planners get together and we'll have those talks about, but yeah, it's reasonable, it's tight, but I think it's somewhat better to be somewhat compressed and build some momentum and not have long lags between certain things. And so hopefully that drives us through to the end of the process.
Okay, and then one other one. There's no plans this time around to do like a housing element committee, because I know way back, I think it was in the early 2000s or so. That was my first foray into Corte Madera town government, was on the housing committee back then.
Yeah, you know, it's something that we debated as well. And actually, to Mayor Beckman's point, you know, thinking back about that process, and we did have a committee there. We have a committee with our objective design and development standards that's worked on technical aspects. But I think the approach this time around I want to take is more of one of just bringing everybody into that tent to be part of that committee and hearing from everyone. You know, and certainly I think we'll have some de facto committees because there'll be certain people more involved than others, but I want everybody to feel like they have the inside, whatever, you know, have the ability to sort of talk directly to decision makers, talk directly to staff, talk directly to be part of each meeting that happens. So no, we're not doing a housing committee at this point. And again, maybe we have to pivot down the road, but at least starting out, we're not going to do that.
Thanks.
Great, thanks, Fred. Any other questions from council members? And if not, we'll open this up to public comment. So any members of the public who would like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments on this?
No, my recommend we did not receive any emailed public comments on this item.
Thank you very much. And I'm not seeing any hands up, so we will close public comment and bring this item back to council for discussion. Who'd like to start us off? Bob.
Sure. To Eli's point about people not attending and how we can solve that. Adam, I see you took my suggestion of putting that we have to plan 725 units into the mailer. I'd get that in the headline or maybe in the first line of the mailer. People need to know what we got to do here. This is a big deal. I don't think, and the sooner we let people know, I think the better off we'll be. Just to put this in perspective, this is the third time I've been through the housing element. The first time we had to plan for over 200 units and we zoned for the Tamridge apartments. We zoned 4 acres at 40 units an acre. And people were incredibly unhappy and we heard about it a lot. If we were to do that again for 725 units, we would have to zone 18 acres at 40 units an acre. That's what we're dealing with here. We need to get people aware of this as soon as possible, and we need to get public input and ideas on this as soon as possible. So that's what I would suggest. But I love the plan. I think you're doing all the right things, but we need to let people know exactly what we're dealing with here, and we need to get everyone's involvement on this as soon as possible, because this is going to be tough. And we need the public's involvement on this to help us get through this. Thanks.
Great points. Thank you, Bob. Who else would like to speak? Fred.
I like the plan. I think the way you laid everything out, it's logical and it's very methodical. I worry a little bit about the timeline. But again, I know you guys can get it done. Just going to be a lot of hard work. I would like to see just a certain degree of oversight, not to micromanage, but I think maybe if you can provide the council with like monthly written reports, like a status type report, where you are, number of attendees. It doesn't have to be 10 pages long, just something simple, because I think this way it keeps us engaged. And this way we're providing the oversight, seeing that, hey, you're on track, or if you're off kilter, what do we need to do to step in and assist you in anything you may help, instead of things getting out of control and out of whack, and it's 4 or 5 months down the road. Couple, I want to say marketing related suggestions. If you did something at Town Center years ago, I would also do something at the Nugget Market. This way you're hitting the east side. If you do in-person type meetings, you may want to try to use Cove School, again on the east side. And one thing, I don't think we've ever done this before, and we were successful with the car show, with this Lions car show, you may want to think about using banners. If you put a banner up, one, you're laughing, but one at the Village, one at the Village, you hit the east side, you put one right in front of Safeway, and one in Mickey Park, just those 3 areas. I mean, there's other sites.
We have 3, they're in production right now, actually.
Okay, good.
So good, yes.
And I hope the phrase housing element does not appear anywhere on them. No jargon.
Yes, the jargon will absolutely.
But otherwise, again, I think it's a good plan.
Thanks, Fred. Let's go to Charles.
Yeah, so I was in line with Bob as far as, the importance, but I think I want to add that I think part of the reason we're emphasizing that is it's too much weight to bear on the council, and it's too difficult of a decision-making process to just let the council try to take ownership of that. And I in no way want to take ownership of that. I read the language that Adam put forth as far as what the state's looking for, and then vetted that against the consultants that he's brought in. And I think, he handpicked them and they're great. And I felt confident that they're the best suited to try to get us through this very difficult and challenging request from the state. But the only way we're going to do it even remotely successful is if we get public buy-in, and that's through dialogue and understanding and a dedicated larger body politic, really trying to engage, which we keep trying to promote. But if we don't get that, we have to, part of the pivot is basically, the council being honest and frank that, we cannot be scapegoated for the lack of public participation, because it requires that. So that's my feedback, but I can definitely support it. It's necessary. And want to well fund it so it's done correctly. So.
Thanks, Charles. Leela, did you want to share any thoughts?
Just I appreciate the efforts that's gone into this plan and looking forward to working with all of you on this. With regard to public participation, I guess the only other thought I have is, making sure that we're trying to reach out to a range of people. I think sometimes the people that feel strongly against it are quick to come out and make their voices heard, which is great. But we want to make sure that we're hearing from the range of people and how they feel about it. So I know you're already thinking about that, Adam, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Great point, Leela. And to your point, I think in that same vein, Adam, I'm sure you're already thinking this, but I think let's make sure that we're hearing from both homeowners and renters, because I think they both have very different perspectives on this conversation. So I think it's important to get both. Other than that, I think great plan that you've laid out here, great staff report. Thank you. I was glad to see that we're pooling resources with the county to make sure that we're complying with AB 686. I think I also really appreciated that you put a section in on the benefits of compliance, because this isn't entirely just a stick thing. There's a carrot too, right? And I think that's important. We're obviously in a very tough situation here, but I think the fact is that the council and clearly our staff are determined to make the most of it. And so I think that matters a lot. I definitely agree with Charles and Bob's comments about, put the number up front. Don't be afraid to, I almost want to say scaring people is like a good way to motivate people to get involved. As Bob said, it is alarming. Having your reading numbers increased by over 1,000%, that's alarming. And I think people need to know that. So definitely agree with and appreciate those comments. The only other thing I wanted to say was just looking at the mailer that you included in the staff report here. Definitely support the idea of the mailer going out, but I think I think there's still, I think we're maybe somewhat falling into old habits here with how we communicate. So like the phrase housing element appears in here twice. And I think we go on to later describe what it is, but that's going to be a confusing thing to people. I think, the second sentence of these dense paragraphs that starts with the town is not required to build housing, but must ensure that zoning. I'm a councilman. I've been doing this for, a number of years now. I had to read that twice to understand what was going on. So that was a little bit of a red flag to me. And then down in the second paragraph, when we say workshops will allow participants to help determine the best sites for new housing, to me, that should be bold. That and the 700 number, those are the two, I think, big things that turn people out, is that this is what's happening. This is how you make your voice heard. So that was just kind of my 2 cents on that. Other than that, though, I think all in all, I think the strategy is right. And I appreciate all the work that you guys have put into this.
Thank you.
And with that, we can take any other comments that folks might want to share. Otherwise, we can take just a motion approving this work plan. Fred.
Yeah, I have just one quick comment, then I'll make the motion. The other thing you may want to think about doing, if you can, putting it in the schools in Neil Cummins and also the Cove in their newsletters. It's just another avenue. It's another demographic that you could hit. So, and with that, I'll go ahead and make the motion.
That's a great point, Fred. And also, if we have like a catalog of all the HOAs in town and we can get on their newsletters, I think that's also a good resource. But thank you for the motion, Fred. Do we have a second? Thank you, Charles, seconds. And Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you very much. That concludes our business items. Brings us to item 7 on tonight's agenda, council reports, and we'll start with the town manager.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, members of
Oh
the
my
council, we have
goodness,
one
I
more
don't,
agenda item.
thank you, everyone. I don't know what, I guess I'm wishful thinking there. We've got 6B, a second business item, discussion and possible approval of policies and procedures related to the body worn camera use and code enforcement personnel. And I'm sorry for shortchanging Mike on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So I'm going to just briefly go over the staff report. Mike Moriarty, our code enforcement and communications manager, and Amy Ackerman, our town attorney, really put this together and this policy, it's their work. So operationally, I'm not going to go over the staff report in detail. I think it's well written. It's 2 pages, and I know the council has reviewed it. As you know, we've expanded our code enforcement operations, and really it's actually, as we started to look at other jurisdictions, it's not is obvious or it happened as consistently as I expected, a lot of people don't actually get body worn cameras yet to code enforcement. And it just really, from an operational standpoint, feels like a best practice, really successful with police, Central Marin Police Authority. Happy to answer any questions about that. But it does a few things for us. It reduces civil liability and complaints. It protects everyone involved, not only our code enforcement officers, but our residents. It gives us an opportunity to really evaluate training. You can always, in the public sector, we can always do something better. Doesn't matter how well you do it, you can always do it better. And so this gives us the opportunity to work with our staff, not from a disciplinary standpoint, but how can we do things better in our communication? So that allows us a little bit of oversight with our staff and to identify training issues and early warning issues early on to protect everyone involved. What I found, and this is my own personal experience, and you heard it in open public comment, the dogs off leash is a big issue, and you're seeing residents against residents right now. And so now we have our admin citation process in place. We're going to start initiating those citations. Rightfully so, Michael felt, we really need to have and follow kind of CMPA's model. Let's follow their lexical policy. There's some nuances to it. There are privacy issues. They're well laid out on page 6 of attachment 1 that we're happy to answer any questions. But I think it's a well thought out, easy to understand and follow kind of policy moving forward. So operationally, this makes a lot of sense for us. What I'll tell you though, and rightfully so, the town attorney pointed this out, this is a public policy decision, and it should really rest with the council. And so we're asking you to review the work we've done, our policy, and really we're asking you to authorize the use of body worn cameras by policy for our code enforcement. And that's what is before you today. You have Michael and Amy are also present. They're happy to answer any questions. And with that, I'll just stop right there and open it up to the council. So.
Great, thanks so much. Do we have any questions from council members on this item? Fred.
Yeah, Todd, just to clarify, this is a best practices. Can't remember if you said, like, are other towns and cities using body cams for their code enforcement officers, or is it just we're trying to get ahead of the game?
I think, yeah, there's definitely other building official, there's other agencies that their code enforcement does carry body worn cameras, but it's not the norm. It's not, there's more that do not than do it. So that surprised me, but it is an absolute best practice. If you're going to put people in a position of authority to enforce something, not having that camera, I think lessons learned over the last 5 to 10 years and the conversation going on right now, I'm reluctant to put them out there without it, quite frankly. So.
Okay. And then Michael, question for you, because I know you have the 2 code enforcement officers. Do you ever go out and do type of code enforcement where you're engaging with the public? So I'm just wondering if all 3 of you are out, 2 of you are wearing body cams, 1 of you wouldn't be, I would assume.
Yeah, so most recently, I have not had to go out and engage the community on code enforcement related tasks and complaints. I really relied mostly on our most recently hired full-time employee, Adam Wiley, to do that. He's been very instrumental in handling complaints, but I will from time to time go with him. I haven't worn a body worn camera personally. This is all relatively new for not only the town, but just Marin agencies as well. But we do live in a world right now where transparency and accountability is everything. And earlier we heard in public comment about from a local resident about some code enforcers that there was a concern. I listened to it earlier and I was like, oh, there's a concern, and what a better way to verify and examine the encounter by having it in a recorded library in a cloud. I can tell you that we have had the cameras now for the last few months, and we have been recording interactions, but we need to have this policy and the council's blessing, so to speak, any further guidance that the council would like to have on this moving forward. And with that, I can answer any further questions, but we do have 2 body-worn cameras. We do have 1 full-time code enforcement officer. Our second code enforcement officer works hours that are alternative to mine. So if I'm going to go out and take control over a situation or get involved, I will also, per policy, wear a body-worn camera. And if need be, we can order a third, but there's just costs that I'm just trying to be fiscally responsible with not only equipment, but also licenses and storage. Those are things. I mean, this is not a huge expense for the town, and just forward thinking. I think Amy could provide you a little more information too, that we are essentially spearheaders in this body-worn camera policy. I think when she did some research, she found a couple of municipalities out of state that were doing this. But I am recently told by Central Marin Police Authority they're going to roll this out with their civilian cadets. And so that they'll likely look at our policy that we're approving, which is a lexible policy, to steer their civilian non-sworn officers on how to proceed during civilian interactions.
Okay, so at this point in time, you don't think it's worth it to pick up a third one just in case all 3 of you are out there for some reason and or one of them breaks down and you need a backup? I don't know the hardware part of it.
Yeah, so I think we can hold off at the moment. Our part-time employee, every time that there's an incident, I can grab the camera. It's at my desk. It's at the docking station. I can wear it. There hasn't been an instance where I wouldn't be able to have access to one. And so, but if we see the need, we can certainly order one. I think I believe it was $600. They're not really that expensive considering the value of what we're going to get in terms of not only protecting the officer, protecting the town from, potential allegations, but just really just memorializing an interaction. And it's already really become instrumental in complaints that I've received. Hey, with regards to access on property, and then we I reviewed the footage and I said, well, we were invited on the property, and I'm happy to share that information with you. And it's really going to change the tone of how people interact with us. Right now, our code enforcement officers, they're out at the park and they're engaging in people with dogs off the leash, and they've been very hostile towards our code enforcement officers. I think this is really going to come in handy when we receive these follow-up complaints. I've already developed a kind of a spiel. The policy says that we need to tell people that we're recording the encounter, and so I'm going to work with my staff on best practices and how to communicate that. It can be tricky at times with a very brief encounter to let someone know, hey, I'm Mike Moriarty, I'm with the town of Corte Madera. This interaction is being recorded on a body-worn camera. So that has to be stated during the interaction. So I need to train my staff to be able to have that gift of gab and be able to communicate that so they're not violating our policy. So with that, I'll answer any further questions. Hope I didn't steer way too far.
No, just 2 quick policy related issue. One thing is the policy then covers yourself then, if you're out.
Yes.
Amy's going like this. And the second question is, I know there's a thing in here about prohibited actions and conduct. Is there a review process set up? So occasionally you or somebody on staff is reviewing the body cams, because you wouldn't know unless you review them that somebody violated one of those actions.
So I would need to spot check. So we have recordings of multiple interactions, somewhere around 6 to 12 a day, and so they're at times several minutes. So I would need to spot check. But as you see in the policy, we've talked about if there's any suspicion of any type of complaint, that the officers are to notify me in writing and or a phone call immediately. And so just so you know, this is all stored in a cloud-based, and the officers go through and they code each interaction. And so the code would be, we've set it up to dog off the leash warning, dog off the leash citation, building inspection warning, building. So So the officers are coding those. So I can go through and account for how many types of incidents we're having and be able to flag those. I've asked them to flag them with any concerns and notes they can put in there that are readily accessible in the library in evidence.com.
Okay, so it sounds like there is a type of review process in place for those.
Yes, and we're set up so the officers can't modify or edit or delete the recordings, and the policy specifies how long we're going to keep the recordings. For a benign situation, it's 60 days, and for something that could be, amount to an administrative citation or some level of an enforcement action, we're going to certainly keep it longer until that actual enforcement action is resolved and an appeal has been heard through the newly recently approved ordinance on the administrative citation. That we're going to be coming to you guys in the next session with a request to create the panel, the appeals panel behind that administrative citation. So that's following this discussion.
Okay, and I'm sorry, Charles, just one last question. This policy, when does it go into effect if we approve it tonight?
Immediately.
Tomorrow.
Okay, all right, thanks. It's pretty quick. Todd's smiling.
Great, thanks, Fred. Charles?
Yeah, my only other question is, does it have to be a verbal acknowledgement in the public that you're recording, or is that only in that private instance that you discussed? Like, could you basically have it printed when you wear the camera, like it says, "Hi, my name is, I'm a public safety officer and I'm recording you," and so therefore it's always present and available even to people that ultimately maybe can't take verbal commands, right? So
yes, that's true. So Madam Attorney and I have been talking about additional ways, and we may end up changing this policy in the near future. We're researching, like, can we find some type of a vest and make it very clearly visible, recording in progress? Because I want to take some of that burden away from the officers of providing these admonitions and give them an opportunity to do the enforcement action. But I will tell you that statement, letting people know that they're being recorded, really changes their behavior. And they're, where they could come out a little more aggressive, they really have settled down and they're actively thinking about what they're saying before they're communicating it. So yes, Councilmember Lee, I'm working with my team right now to try to find ways to create some messaging on their uniform that says recording underway. We've ordered some yellow tape to put on the actual device that it's gonna, with a label maker, say recording underway. They were wearing it on their belts. It wasn't as visible, and so we're developing in other ways to wear it up more visible, so it's remarkable.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Leela?
Just to follow up on that. So I noticed that as far as the admonishing that they're recording, it says during the course of the conversation, they will do that, except if it's on private property, and then they have to do it at the beginning and ask for permission. Just, can you speak a little bit to why that difference, and I assume the effort would be.
Absolutely. So when you're in a public place, there's a less of a
Can I just jump in here?
Sure,
so I just want you to know, we did a really deep dive on this because the town is kind of ahead of the curve on this as to trying to make sure we're balancing this goal of transparency and professionalism in code enforcement operations with respecting federal and state rights to privacy, as well as the California Invasion of Privacy Act. And that's the one that prohibits one person from recording a conversation without the other person's knowledge. There's an exception in that for law enforcement. There's not an exception for a civil code enforcement. So I drafted this as conservatively as possible to protect the right to privacy. And that's why I don't think you have an expectation of privacy if you are in a public park and violating off-leash dog laws. However, I want to protect the town from any possible allegation of a violation of the act or privacy. So that's why, you know, and Mike kept asking me, are you sure? Are you sure? And I said, yes, we need to disclose. And that's for that reason. And our policy differs depending on the expectation of privacy. Before anybody enters a private house, first of all, our building inspectors have to get permission to come in unless we have an administrative warrant. So they're going to ask, and then they will ask for permission before they enter. And we agreed that it made sense to have that on tape so that if the person says, no, I don't want you to record, and then it's turned off. So what we're trying really I had an associate do a deep dive on privacy rights because I really wanted to make sure that we use this as appropriately as possible and not in any way that compromises anyone. And that's why even in a business, I don't think there's an expectation of privacy, but the recording needs to be limited to the interaction with the actual person who is either the owner or the agent, not record any additional conversations or people who are in that business. So we're really, really trying to take care here to meet the goals of the program and the policy, but ensuring that we're not overstepping in terms of other issues around privacy.
And just to add to that too, from the privacy, but operationally that works right and with what we do. So again, like if someone allows us to come in, we would come into the house. But if they didn't allow us, we would get an administrative warrant. And if we had that administrative warrant, we would be allowed to, it would be part of it. We'd be allowed to video and record everything we did. So really operationally, it really ties in and forces us to follow best practices and what we should be doing anyway. So we don't see this as an issue operationally.
Great, thank you guys. Any additional questions from council members? And if not, we'll go ahead and open this up to the public. So any member of the public who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand through Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org. Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments on this?
No, we did not receive any emailed public comments on this item.
Thank you. And I'm not seeing any hands up, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion and a possible motion. Who'd like to start us off? Bob.
Yeah, just from an experience standpoint, I've been on the police council a while, and about, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, Todd, we became one of the first police departments in Marin County to authorize the use of body cameras. And we got a report about a year later. And what was really interesting, we didn't have a lot of complaints, but one of the biggest outcomes of using body cameras for every interaction that Chief Norton reported on was that our complaints had almost disappeared because they would just say, great news. You know, I understand you're upset with the way the officer treated you, but we have the whole incident on video and we're happy to review it with you. Let's come on in and we'll review it. And a lot of times they didn't show up. So I think this is a great policy. I know this is a difficult issue. I've heard from people in the park actually have said that they have talked to enforcement officers and have been told that it's okay to not have a dog on a leash, which I'm sure didn't happen, but you know, people are saying that. So I think recording it is great. And we should absolutely do this and do this now because dogs off leash in the park continues to be a real problem and we need to get on this. Thanks. So I'll move to approve it.
Great, thanks, Bob. Any other comments from council members? And if not, do we have a second? Thank you, Leela. All right, Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Mike, Amy, and Todd for making this happen. This is great policy. Appreciate it. Now we are going to move on to council reports for real. No more business items. And we will start with the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just a quick update. And I just want to, again, your comments were taken to heart, and it's going to be a challenge also for our communications expert, Mike Moriarty, too. So take your code enforcement hat off and make sure we communicate properly lessons learned of the past as we move forward through the housing conversation. And with that, we are set for our appeal hearing to present to APAG. That's on Friday, September 29th. The window is 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. We have we'll have 5 minutes to basically share our concerns with the board. We are limited in our discussion and what we say to what we had submitted via letter. And so we'll do that. Adam Wolf is taking the lead with our Assistant Town Attorney, Ann Danforth. I will also be there for support as well. And again, I think if any council members individually, if there's something you feel strongly about that needs to be emphasized within this letter, please, check in with Adam or I, but we think we understand the direction of the council. We support what everyone is trying to do. We're one of a few in our area that met the housing requirements this last round, and we always want to do our part. And so we're going to emphasize those words that you put into the letter recently to ABAG and do our best. But again, we have 5 minutes and we really have to stick to what is in that letter. But I know Ann and Adam are up to the challenge, and I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Adam. But again, if you have any feedback for us individually, please let us know, because we want to represent your thoughts to that board. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Todd. We'll go to council member reports. We'll start with Charles.
So I still haven't had my first CAM meeting, but I do have the agenda. And then also we've had some communications from the director outside of normal agendized business that I wanted to talk to the community about. That is that there's a shortage of crossing guards, and they're having a hard time filling those positions. And they reached out to me and others in the community to try to spread the word that they are looking for crossing guards to fill positions across Marin. So hopefully that stops being a shortage soon. The first agenda is going to be primarily reviews, but there's some interesting ones about the alternative fuel program and success and its continued outreach. There's a resolution to oppose coal transport through the county of Marin. There's an overall countywide travel demand forecast. They're going to update the use and future plans for the Sanderfell bike and pedestrian lane that's been temporarily installed. And then also just allocation of general tax dollars for the budget this year. So if you want to attend virtually, it is September 23rd at 2 of this month at 6 p.m. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Let's go to Leela.
I don't have anything to report this time.
Great. Thank you. Let's go to Bob.
Yes, we had a meeting for the Marin Wildfire Protection Authority. Approved several new projects to go through, but the biggest thing I walked away with, we had a presentation, and I kind of knew this, but I saw a date on it. We have the worst drought in Marin County that we've had in 140 years. There is significant vegetation damage in Marin County. It's getting really scary, and we're entering fire season. And we need to get the public aware and get them on board. And I'm going to be talking to Todd about a couple of ideas I have from the authority that we can do to get out to the town, maybe through the newsletter, to get people aware and get them working to help save this, because it's potentially a really, really tough fire season. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. And thanks for sharing that, Bob. I have been out on hikes recently and noticed that there are trees without leaves of, types of trees that normally have leaves all throughout the summer. And it's very, very disconcerting to see. So thank you.
It's one of the things we kept seeing. He was showing us pictures, and he would say, this is normally all green, and it's completely brown and dying. And
and a lot of our
hillsides.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Let's go to Fred.
I attended the MCCMC Economic Recovery Committee last Friday. Two other things, a big thank you to Todd and the DPW staff, and also to the village, the Corte Madera Lions, the EV and classic car show. It was a big hit, a big success, 90 plus classic cars. Some of the dealers I talked to, they actually got sales that day and some leads and test drives. So they were all happy. I think it was a great community event. And Lions are looking at doing it again next year. We estimated the crowd to be about 3,000 that had come through there. So again, I think it's showcasing Corte Madera in a totally positive light and bringing business into the community also. So it was all good. And last thing is shout out, I want to say to RJ and his team. It looks like they're in the process of wrapping up the improvements on Paradise as far as the sidewalk. Repaving was going on, I think, last week. And it looks like they're restriping this week, and there's a little bit of cement work left. And again, I think it's looking really good. I did hear some complaints about traffic backup. I think it's just the process going through when they have to block off lanes to do the work. But it's looking really good.
Thank you very much, Fred. And for me, I think in the interest of time, only thing that I want to make sure to report on is the League of Cities is having their annual conference starting tomorrow. Todd's already there. So I'll be heading out tomorrow. I'm Corte Madera's voting delegate there. And one thing that I'm looking forward to supporting is a resolution of the league that's recommending that the state legislature undertake reform to the Bradley Burns sales tax. And basically what that would do is currently if you order something on Amazon, say, the jurisdiction that gets the sales tax is the jurisdiction where the fulfillment center is located, which oftentimes is nowhere near the community where the item is ordered or delivered to. And so this resolution is urging the state legislature to fix that and bring the sales tax to the jurisdiction where the sale actually happens and where the product is ordered and delivered to. So I think that's a fantastic thing, long overdue. Looking forward to supporting that. And I think that's the only thing I'm going to report for now. Charles.
Yeah, Eli, did I hear you're going to be the president of all the sewer and districts in like the group in Marin County? And did I see you did a recent site visit? Was there any discussion that came out of that?
Oh, I just took the rotating chair of the Central Marin Sanitation Agency board, which I think I mentioned at our last meeting. And I did through that get to tour the treatment plant and specifically the anaerobic digester cover that ruptured that I told you guys about previously. That repair work is underway. So I got to go check that out and kind of tour some of the facilities there, which was really cool. The general manager there, Jason Dow, has been at the agency literally since he was an intern. So he basically is CMSA and he was able to give me, just information overload in a good way. So I learned a lot about just kind of how that system works. I don't really have anything like particularly earth-shattering to report to you guys right now on that, other than that the repair project is going well. So yeah, great. So that concludes our council reports. Do we have any comments on our draft agenda for the next meeting?
And I just want to quickly note that the governor signed AB 361, which will allow teleconference meetings. It is one of the worst drafted laws I've seen in a really long time. So all of the city attorneys are furiously studying it, trying to understand how to implement it. One of my favorite parts is that you have to make this finding every 30 days. Apparently they forgot that some months have 31 days. So that's just kind of indicative of how well it's drafted. But you'll see some slightly different agenda language on the agenda starting in October.
Man, well, we do not envy you having to clean up after them. Thank you. We do not have an SD2 meeting tonight, so if there are no comments on the upcoming agenda, we are adjourned.
Hey, Charles, I took a tour of the sanitary, their facilities. If you call up, I think his name is Jason, the general manager there, he'll give you a tour. And I was totally this was, I think, about a year or so ago. I was totally fascinated with just how the whole thing works and just how everything is like reused in some form or another. It was fascinating. And he really gets into it. I thought I was going to be there about an hour. I think I was there like 2.5, almost 3 hours. But if you reach out to him, go take a tour if you can. It's fascinating.
Is that open to the public as well? Hopefully it is. I think.
I think he's done tours like for kids.
Yeah, no.
This is just because we're part of the JPA and he wants our council members to
all right,
know how it works.
Maybe we should make it an educational process for the schools.
Yeah, just reach out to him with an email. And I'm sure he'll accommodate you. Like I said, I thought I was going to be there an hour. I think I was there like 3 hours. So but yeah, you'll enjoy it.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Cheers.